The auction in the dust. The summer sun hung low over the Wyoming frontier, its harsh rays baking the dirt streets of a mining town that had already seen too much cruelty. The year was 1878, and law was thin, stretched across the plains like a frayed rope. Matthew Kane, known as the Mountain Man by locals, stood tall in the crowd, his broad shoulders and weather-beaten face setting him apart. He was a man of the wilderness, part trapper, part hunter, part hermit. He had lived half his life in the Rockies, away from the corruption of men, but every few months he came down into town for supplies. He hadn't planned on walking into an auction that day. At the edge of the street, a wooden platform had been erected. Chained together stood 6 figures, a Chinese woman with a pale, tired face and 5 children clustered around her, their eyes wide with fear. A cruel-eyed settler shouted to the crowd, "Indenture! $6 for the whole lot. You feed 'em, you work 'em, you do what you like with 'em. Who'll start the bid?" The crowd laughed. Some men spat into the dirt. A few muttered about how foreign mouths had no place here. The mother kept her head bowed, clutching her youngest child, a boy no more than 3 years old. Her other children, girls and boys ranging from 6 to 12, pressed against her skirts, trembling. Matthew felt something twist in his gut. He had seen cruelty before, but this was worse than leaving a wounded animal in a trap. These were people, treated like cattle. The bidding started, if it could be called that. $2, one man sneered. Another raised to 3, laughing about how the children could wash pans at the mine. The mother flinched at every word. Matthew's hand drifted to the coin pouch at his belt. He had gold enough for supplies, flour, salt, powder, maybe new boots. Not for this. And yet, as he stared at the children, he realized he could not walk away. $6, he said, his deep voice carrying over the crowd. The auctioneer blinked. 6. You're payin' the full price. The men around laughed. Kane's gone soft, one hooted. Another added, he'll have mouths to feed instead of bears to fight. Matthew ignored them. He stepped forward, dropped $6 silver onto the platform, and said simply, "They come with me." The chain was struck off. The mother looked up for the first time, her dark eyes meeting his. They held gratitude and fear, all mixed together. She whispered something in Chinese, clutching her children tighter. Matthew nodded once. "You're safe now." The walk back to his cabin was long. His homestead sat at the foot of the mountains, where a creek ran through pine forests and the soil was good for a small garden. He led the way on horseback, while the mother and children followed, carrying nothing but the rags on their backs. That night, Matthew made stew from venison and wild onions. He set bowls before the children, who ate like they hadn't seen food in days. The mother hesitated before taking a spoon, her manners careful, but hunger overcame her. When they finished, Matthew lit his pipe by the fire. "Name," he said, pointing gently toward her. She touched her chest. "Lien." Then, touching each child in turn, she gave their names: May, June, Lin, Tao, and Little Sun. Her English was halting but clear enough. Matthew nodded. "I'm Matthew. This is your home now." Lien lowered her eyes. "We belong you." Matthew's brows knit. He leaned forward. "No. You belong to no man. You're free." Her lips trembled, as though the word "free" was a sound she had forgotten. The children exchanged cautious glances, clinging to one another. That night, Matthew spread out his bedroll for the children on the floor and slept near the fire himself. As he listened to their soft breathing, he felt something new stir in his chest, a weight he had carried alone for years lifting, replaced with a sense of responsibility he had not asked for, but could not deny. Over the weeks that followed, the rhythm of life on the homestead changed. Lien worked silently at first, tending the garden, mending clothes, scrubbing the cabin floor. The children followed Matthew into the woods, learning how to set snares, how to fish with willow poles, how to chop firewood without splitting their toes. Slowly, laughter returned to the cabin. June, the eldest boy, admired Matthew's rifle and asked to learn to shoot. May, shy and gentle, followed Lien everywhere, helping her cook over the iron stove. Little Sun clung to Matthew's leg like a shadow, his eyes always wide with wonder at the towering man who had saved them. One evening, as the fire burned low, Lien spoke softly. Why you by us?" Matthew stared into the flames. "Because no one else would. Because I couldn't watch it happen." She studied him for a long time, her face unreadable. Then she bowed her head. "You good man." Matthew almost laughed. He was no saint. He had killed, fought, and lived half wild in the mountains. But looking at her, he wondered if perhaps she saw something in him he had long forgotten. By autumn, word had spread. Neighbors whispered. A mountain man living with a Chinese woman and her brood of children? It was scandal enough to stir every gossip in the county. Matthew didn't care. But when his brother Samuel rode up one afternoon, things changed. "Matt," Samuel said, swinging down from his horse, "you've lost your senses. Folks are talking. They say you bought yourself a slave wife." Matthew's jaw tightened. "She's no slave." Samuel scoffed. "Then what is she? You got a family that ain't yours, and people think you've gone mad." Matthew glanced toward the cabin, where Lien and the children worked in the yard. He felt a surge of protectiveness rise within him. "They're mine now," he said firmly, "by choice. And I'll fight anyone who says otherwise." Samuel shook his head, muttering, "You'll ruin your name, brother." Then he mounted and rode away. Matthew stood watching the dust trail fade, his fists clenched. For the first time, he realized he would have to make a decision, one that would silence the whispers once and for all. He looked back at Lien, who met his gaze with quiet strength. And in that moment, he knew what he must do. The vow that shocked them all. The first snow of winter dusted the peaks when Matthew rode into town again, this time with Lien and the children bundled on the wagon behind him. The townsfolk stared openly, whispers following them as they stopped outside the small wooden church. Inside, Reverend Carter raised his brows in surprise. "Matthew Kane, what brings you here?" Matthew removed his hat. His voice was steady. "I want you to marry us." The Reverend blinked. "Marry?" His eyes darted to Lien, who stood quietly with the children gathered around her. "Yes," Matthew said. "She is my wife in truth. I want it so in law and before God." The Reverend hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If it is her wish." Lien looked up, understanding the meaning if not every word. She stepped closer to Matthew, her small hand slipping into his rough one. Her answer was simple, "Yes." The ceremony was plain, spoken in the soft lamplight of the church. The Reverend's voice trembled at first, but soon steadied. Matthew repeated the vows with solemn conviction. Lien, her accent thick but her words clear, promised to stand beside him. When it was done, Matthew bent his head and kissed her gently, sealing the vow. The children clapped shyly, their faces glowing with joy. Outside, the townsfolk murmured in shock. Some scowled, others shook their heads. But Matthew held Lien's hand tightly and led her to the wagon. "They can talk all they like," he said quietly to her. "You're my wife. That's all that matters." She smiled for the first time since he had known her, a smile that lit her entire face. Back at the homestead, life took on new meaning. Lien moved through the cabin with confidence now, her presence not as a servant but as mistress of the home. The children grew strong, learning both her traditions and Matthew's. The garden flourished, the traps yielded, and for the first time in years, Matthew felt the warmth of family fill the cold mountain nights. But challenges still came. One evening, a group of men rode up, angry voices calling from the yard. Matthew stepped outside, rifle in hand. "You think you can shame this town by marrying a foreigner?" one spat. "You'll bring trouble to us all." Matthew leveled his gaze. "My wife and children are under this roof. If any man seeks to harm them, he'll answer to me." The men shifted uneasily. They knew his reputation, a fighter, a survivor, a man who feared nothing in the wild. One by one, they backed down, muttering curses as they rode away. When Matthew stepped back inside, Lien touched his arm. "You protect us," she said softly. He looked into her eyes. "No, we protect each other." Spring came, bringing wildflowers to the meadows and laughter to the cabin yard. May sang as she gathered herbs. June hunted rabbits with Matthew. Lin and Tao raced by the creek. Little Sun followed Lien everywhere, his cheeks round with health. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Matthew and Lien stood side by side, watching the children play. "Do you regret it?" she asked. He turned to her, surprised. "Regret what?" "Buying us. Marrying me." Matthew smiled, a rare, quiet smile. He took her hand in his calloused one. "It's the best thing I ever did." Her eyes shone with unshed tears. "You give us life again." He shook his head. "No, Lien. You gave me life. I was just a lonely mountain man before you." She leaned against him, her head resting on his chest as the children's laughter rang through the valley. For the first time in years, Matthew Kane knew peace. And though the world might never understand, the mountains bore witness to a truth stronger than gossip, stronger than hate. That a man's greatest strength was not in how he survived alone, but in how he built a family from love.